Hello everyone, Dino here with Overclockers Tech. We decided to go ahead and do a video view of the BIOS. The UEFI BIOS used with this P67 FTW is something new for EVGA and probably a lot of you users too, as it's just been recently become mainstream. Anyway, when you boot into BIOS, the first screen you get to is called the overview screen. And this is basically just a list of the standard settings like your time and date, and you also get some CPU information and also what your current speed is. As you can see, we've adjusted some of the voltages and the multiplier, and we're currently running a mild 4.0 gigahertz overclock. So we'll move over to the advanced tab, which is where you can set your ACPI, your onboard devices, your SATA configuration, which you have the option of either RAID, AHCI, or the standard IDE mode, or you can actually disable them all if you care. The USB configuration is where you can enable or disable all the different ports on the board, and it'll also give you a list of anything you have connected to them. We have a card reader, and that's the listing for these down here at the bottom. And the hardware monitors, where you can keep an eye on your temperatures and voltages, and also set your fan speeds to either manual, or you can use a smart fan function, which will allow you to set the fan speed based on temperatures. And moving over to the chipset, you have the ME sub-configuration settings available. And the other one of note is the LED display built onto the motherboard. You can either have it display the CPU temperature, or if you disable it, it'll just show you the postcode once the system is booted into Windows. And we'll skip the overclocking and come back to that in a minute. The boot section is obviously where you can set your boot priority. Down here, if you just hit enter, it'll give you a list of all the devices you have attached, and you can set them in any order that you like. And moving over to security is where you can set a password, a BIOS password, which basically means as soon as you start your system, as the BIOS is loading, it'll actually prompt you for a password. And the save and exit setting is where you can save and exit or discard any changes you've made. And the other neat feature down here is the profile setup. And we have saved one profile so far, our 4 gig overclock. And you have the ability to save up to 4. And the other thing is now you can actually name these, which is a very nice feature, something we've been harping on for a while, and we finally have that option to name them. Okay, we'll move back over to the overclocking section, and of course this is where you're going to be able to set your memory speed, and you have an option to go clear up to 2133 and beyond. You can set a profile, either use the default SPD profile built into the memory, or you can use the XMP profiles or the custom. And if you select the custom, you'll be able to enter each individual channel and set those manual like we have done there. We'd like to set a manual to match the manufacturer's specs of the memory, and the same thing under the B channel, same settings available there. And the CPU configuration is where you'll be able to control the idling functions if you want your CPU to idle down the voltage and the speed, and a lot of this stuff we have changed already because, like I said, we have been overclocking. The block setting is probably not something you're going to want to mess with because the block default is 100 megahertz, and overclocking on the Sandy Bridge socket 1155 CPUs is pretty much done with a multiplier, so you probably aren't going to be messing with that. And there is the CPU multiplier setting. You can simply hit a plus or minus key to adjust it up, adjust it down, wherever you want to be. We're set at 40 right now for our 4 gig overclock. You have a dummy overclock available if you want to use it. Most people aren't. Most people like to overclock manual. We're set without V-droop right now. And you have a bunch of different options here that you're going to be able to play around with as you overclock your system. One thing of note here is the internal PLL voltage override. That's normally set to disabled default, but as you begin overclocking, you're definitely going to want to enable that. And once you're done, you can save and exit your changes. And that wraps up our video tour of the EVGA P67 FTW BIOS. Thanks for watching, and continue reading the review as we dive into some additional overclocking, and we'll run some benchmarks on the motherboard. Thanks.